Hello, everyone. This is Amanda, your astrologer, and today I have a very special guest on my channel. And today we have Robert Weinstein. He goes by CryptoDamus on Twitter, aka at Astro Crypto Guru on Twitter. And he also has a website, astrocryptoreport.com, that you can visit, which will lead you to his Patreon, CryptoDamus1. And also, he's been featured on the Astrology podcast a couple times. Firstly, episode 282, The Astrology of Bitcoin, and then April 2023, Astrology Forecast. So in addition to that, you've also spoken at some conferences and been published. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on your YouTube,
Yeah.
and it's great to be here and talk about all this good financial astrology stuff. And yeah, I've spoken at ESAR 2020. I actually spoke at the virtual NORWAC, sorry, ESAR 2022. I spoke at virtual NORWAC 2020 and recently just spoke at the in-person NORWAC 2024. And yeah, I've been published in the Mountain Astrologer 3 times for both medical astrology and financial astrology,
Oh,
and been
yeah.
doing astrology for almost 24 years.
That is 2 Jupiter cycles if you're counting. So, yeah, so I really like the fact that you are this big financial Bitcoin astrologer on Twitter, but then you also have this other side, which is medical astrology, and you have a background in acupuncture and Qigong, and you started with evolutionary and medical astrology, which I'm really interested in the medical side, being a sixth house stellium person. So I would love to hear about that. And then, yeah, the financial astrology is sort of where you landed. But I'm really happy that you're here because at the beginning of the year on Twitter, I sort of declared like I want to be someone that is data based and has examples and potentially math and statistics to prove or not to prove. It's really not about proving things with astrology, but to get a little bit of data and have it be verifiable to a degree. So I appreciate that you work with numbers. You are either right or you're wrong with this financial stuff. And yeah, I just really appreciate that about you. So thank you for
Thank you.
being here. I have some questions about Bitcoin specifically, but did you have anything you wanted to add before we get into it?
Well, just like what you just said, I actually spoke about that at NORWAC, and you can check out my NORWAC talk. It's on the stock market. It's on the astrology of like market manias and crashes throughout the last 100 years. And one of the things I really emphasize is how financial astrology is really, in many cases, a mathematical proof of astrology. It's one of the only quantifiable branches of astrology. And if you go back and look at that talk, you can see, the planetary alignments that repeat again and again and again, producing the same exact market manias and crashes over hundreds of years. And it's like, like it's undeniable. It's an undeniable proof of astrology, and we need that. And yeah, I mean, you're never going to be able to prove astrology to the skeptics, and it's not even worthwhile to try.
No,
But it's good for the profession to have some kind of quantifiable proof of astrology.
right. So yeah, I reviewed your episode that you did with Chris back in 2020. And, there's just some definitions that I think were really useful that I wanted to go over quickly for anyone who's new to what Bitcoin is. Just a quick introduction of that. Bitcoin being, in your words, a value based on a collective belief system. So Bitcoin is not much different from physical money. Being invested in a consensus reality is just basically what money is, agreeing that something has value to whatever degree, and people have faith in it. Bitcoin is not controlled by a bank. It is a store of value, a currency, a unit of exchange, and it's sort of, in your words, digital gold 2.0. And one value of it is that it's based on scarcity. So there's only going to be a certain amount that will ever be in existence, and they will be created until the year 2140. So, yeah, and then so money conveys value, and that's pretty much what all the notes that I have for like Bitcoin's definition. Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean it's the first one, it's really the first global currency that transcends national banks, current national currencies, corporate control, central bank control. You know, it's kind of an independent entity. And of course, there's more and more major financial institutions are getting involved with it. But Bitcoin itself is outside of any kind of, you know, it's decentralized finance. It's outside of any kind of banking or corporate control or, you know, or any, it doesn't belong to any nation. And so in that way, I think it's a very positive thing because it really, it's a uniting factor. It brings people together from all over the world. Traders, speculators, investors, astrologers. I talk to astrologers and cryptocurrency traders and investors from all over the world, like every day on Twitter and on X. And I think it's a positive thing that gives us an alternative to the mainstream financial system. So that's another thing. And it is decentralized. It's not controlled by any, you know, one organization or corporation or bank. So it's a really unique, you know, global currency for the 21st century.
Absolutely. And I think the ingress of Pluto into Aquarius really is giving it a, an energy that it can grow in with sort of, Aquarian being innovations and digital and the power of Pluto moving through that over the next 20 years. And we saw AI sort of correlate to that ingress as well. I'm sort of curious what your opinion is on how AI could influence this, just digital currency in general,
Influence.
or
Oh, well, I don't know the answer to that question. I
can
mean,
it influence it, or is it sort of immune to it?
I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't really thought about that so much. I mean, there's like AIs or algorithmic trading programs. There's AI,
Hmm.
you know, cryptocurrency coins that are sort of like based on AI projects. I mean, there is definitely some connection between crypto and AI, but I mean, I see them as kind of separate things that are both correlating to Pluto and Aquarius. I did predict, I mean, going back to my 2023 annual report, I put out an annual forecast every year that does a general astrology forecast as well as markets. And you know, I did predict that AI was going to blow up in both 2023 and 2024, and recommended several of the top AI stocks as our top stock picks. So I think Pluto and Aquarius is a, you know, beneficial and, you know, like you said, for AI and for crypto. I mean, I'm not really sure. You know, I see them as kind of separate things, though.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious if there will ever
Separate
be
technology.
a merge of that somehow, or we'll see, I guess. But also, I'm wondering if you know anything about CBDC, central bank digital currency, or just the concept of governments, utilizing digital currencies. And do you
Right.
think that in the future we could have a cashless society?
Interesting question. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, the crypto community is really sort of against these central bank digital currencies. They see them as a means for control, you know,
Right,
and they're centralized. So this is the opposite of crypto. It's
right.
controlled by, you know, the Federal Reserve, by the central bank. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about that and about the Federal Reserve as well, but I'm not going to get into that too much. I mean, I think we are going certainly going in the direction of a cashless society. I mean, the old sort of like, you know, the Saturn Jupiter conjunctions were in Earth for 200 years, and you know, now they're in air, and we've sort of transitioned out away from, you know, gold and silver to paper and credit and plastic. And now I think in some ways we may even be moving away from paper and plastic even into things, like cryptocurrencies and digital payments and PayPal and, Venmo and all of these new digital payment systems. And I think that's all corresponding to, first of all, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions moving into air signs
Hmm.
for the next 200 years, right? We had that last one in December 2020. That was in Aquarius, right? So a lot of
Hmm.
people talk about this kind of Aquarian age. And, Aquarius is the sign of new technologies. Aquarius is the sign of the future. And Aquarius is a sign that we've seen time and time again is very, very friendly to cryptocurrencies, especially Venus in Aquarius. You tend to get really big rallies in cryptocurrencies. Like, what a surprise. Uh, yeah, I do think, we could be moving away. We could be moving away from that. And it's interesting because actually, if you go back, Pluto and Aquarius, like a couple of cycles, uh, like 3 cycles ago, was it like the 1200s, 1300s period? That's around the time that Marco Polo brought back the idea of paper money from China.
Hmm.
So paper money itself was like a cutting edge new technology.
Right.
Pluto and Aquarius new technology like 600 years ago.
Right.
And now, so every time Pluto is in Aquarius, we do tend to see big technological changes that affect money and banking systems. And so this one will probably be similar. And I think that cryptocurrencies will be a big part of the Pluto and Aquarius period. So I think
I
I answered the
agree.
question.
Yeah, and it leads me to my next question, which is, if I'm not mistaken, Pluto will be moving back to 29 Capricorn for a couple months soon.
Indeed,
It's
indeed.
almost there, and it's conjoined to the natal Bitcoin Uranus, if I'm not mistaken.
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
It will conjoin Bitcoin's natal Jupiter, which is at 29
Right.
Capricorn. It will
Okay.
be like either the fourth or the fifth. It will be the final one of a long
Pass over
series.
that.
So it's been on there for
Yeah.
already, for quite some time.
Right. So it's passed over there already a few
Yeah.
times. And how do you foresee this last pass going? What has it been doing, and what does the final pass look like to you?
Well, overall, it's actually been quite positive for Bitcoin. I mean, I think we're seeing, yeah, Pluto can be breakdown and destruction, but it can also be renewal and regeneration and empowerment.
Hmm.
And that's mainly what we've seen, really. And I think it's not separate from the Aquarius ingress because they're so close to each other.
It
You
goes
know,
hand in hand. One begets the
yeah,
other.
because the Bitcoin natal Jupiter is at like 2940, or I can't remember the exact degree, 2935. Also, by the way, Bitcoin's progress sun is also at 2920 Capricorn right now, or
Oh,
29.
wow.
So Bitcoin's progress sun is conjunct Bitcoin's natal Jupiter.
Okay.
There's that is happening, and that is, I think, actually quite bullish for Bitcoin, right? I mean,
I think
if
it's
your
auspicious. Yeah.
progress sun would be on your natal Jupiter, you would probably be having a good year.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is having a good year. So I think there's that also. So Pluto is going to be on the Bitcoin progress sun, Bitcoin's natal Jupiter. And the other factor is that Neptune has been sextiling that position at 29
Right.
too. So a lot of times you will get these multiple different factors. Now, Neptune is moving off of that point as Jupiter is going to come in. Now, the interesting thing is that it's going to station on it almost exactly to the minute.
Wow.
So that's a bit of a wild card. I just don't know exactly what to predict there. Usually, like I think of when you are undergoing personally a series of Pluto transits, like the first couple ones tend to be the destruction phase, and like really destroying whatever the obsolete pattern is. And then the final ones tend to be more positive, and you're on the upswing into the regeneration and renewal phase.
Yeah, I think of it like compost with Pluto. It's like it's all dead and then it becomes soil you can use again. It's fertile.
Totally. And we
Hmm.
saw that when, the last time Pluto was making a conjunction in the Bitcoin chart was to the sun, which was at 13 Capricorn. And during that period, which I talked about with Chris Brennan, you had the Mount Gox catastrophe of the major Bitcoin exchange getting hacked and the value of Bitcoin plummeting. And it was almost and there was tons of headlines of Bitcoin is dead. Okay.
Yeah.
You could not that now that is
So
like
literal.
the perfect symbolism. I would have to go back and look at the exact transit sequence of Pluto. I don't have it off the top of my head, but you also had that again when the FTX exchange collapsed and you saw headlines of Bitcoin is dead.
Hmm.
And so what I see is Pluto is actually, yeah, there was a death with the collapse of FTX, which almost, totally crashed the crypto industry. But here we are 18 months later, and crypto's making all-time highs. And Trump gave a speech yesterday about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And so, it's talk about coming back to life and regeneration and renewal. That's what I think Pluto is really doing, actually, with Jupiter. And Pluto-Jupiter combinations are a wealth
Oh yeah.
in astrology, especially the trines and the sextiles. But so there was a death, and I think now we're seeing the regeneration. And also, I mean, I don't know if you want to take a look at Bitcoin's natal chart, but like again, like I said on the astrology podcast, that thing is the Terminator. I mean, exalted Mars and Capricorn conjunct the Sun and Pluto. It's like, and talk, Capricorn business and finance, and this thing wants to take over global finance. That's what I saw when I looked at the chart initially, and that's why I really started working on it seriously. I was like, okay, this thing is going to be unstoppable, and and so far that's proven to be correct. It can be slowed down. It is extremely crisis prone and volatile. So it will have these big wipeout years, and it's died like so many times because it does have Pluto, that Pluto and the stellium there, but it always comes back stronger every time.
Right. Yeah. So, what, just to review, so it has three exalted planets. Do you have the chart at all?
Yeah, yeah. Hang on a second. So here's the Bitcoin natal chart. It's the blockchain, excuse me, the Genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain is time stamped for January 3rd, 2009
Right,
at
right.
6:15 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Universal Time. So, when I found out about that, I was like, oh my God, this is such a gift to astrologers because we have a time-stamped birthday. Now
Right.
the location is unknown
Hmm.
because the creator of Bitcoin, such the so-called Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a pseudonym, is still one of the greatest mysteries of the 21st century.
Right.
Still
And
to this
so,
day, nobody knows who he is.
due to the anonymous nature of this creator, we don't have the location, and but we have you said we have the time. I know we have the time. So the moon is correct. We just don't have the houses or the ascendant. But yeah, you can still do a lot of work with a chart despite that. So, okay, yeah, that
Well,
is
we've as we talked about, we sort of rectified the location to London.
okay.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons to think that London is the correct one. First of all of Satoshi's emails and all of his writings have been analyzed by experts like to death, and he uses British spelling. So he's either British, Australian, or Canadian, are the good
Hmm.
chances. I mean, okay, he could be like maybe Indian or like from some other British Commonwealth country like Kenya, but likely he's probably from either, I mean, Australia, South Africa, the UK or Canada because of the spellings that and the grammar that he uses are more British. There was a quote that was from the Financial Times of London that was encoded in the original Bitcoin Genesis block. So we know that he reads the Financial Times of London. Now that's just circumstantial. I mean, anybody could read the Financial Times of London, but so the
Some clues.
likelihood is that he's British.
Hmm.
And also, if you've been paying attention, there's been a lot of activity. So that rectifies the Bitcoin chart to 8 degrees 52 minutes. London, which is very potent in your chart as well as
That
you
is my rising degree. Yeah. So
almost to the minute.
I,
Yeah.
I've been looking at the chart. That really blew me away. And then there was another chart that I saw that you and Chris talked about. It was the sale of the first. the first like sale on Bitcoin.
The first transaction.
Yes, and I
I
think
don't
that one,
actually use that chart, but some astrologers do use it. Yeah.
it was just spooky
Um,
because I think it had a 17-degree sun in Capricorn, which is my
oh
sun.
yeah,
So I
that
was
would
like,
make
oh, that's
sense.
kind of weird.
Oh, right. So you have the same sun and rising sign, yeah,
It's
as
very strange. So I'm like, ooh, because I had some Bitcoin during the pandemic. I had a little bit, and then I had to sell it, unfortunately. And then, but I'm looking to, get back in it, and I feel like this
okay.
is my sign too, right?
Okay. Well, you have a connection. You have a connection with it. And that's always interesting when you have a connection in your chart. I mean, its north node is on my sun, midheaven and Mercury in the 10th house, and I've become sort of famous,
Yeah, it's your
for my
career.
work on
Yeah,
Bitcoin astrology, which is a north node. North node can bring fame, and it shows you your destiny and your path and so forth like that. So yeah, I mean
right.
that's kind of interesting. Um,
That's so cool.
but there's been a lot of activity at 8 degrees over the last couple of years.
Right.
So Jupiter stationed at 8 degrees Aries a couple years
Yeah,
ago.
trying,
Uh,
yeah.
Mars stationed at 8 degrees Gemini a couple years ago. And so we've had a lot of activity at 8 degrees,
Hmm.
especially planetary stationings. And the Bitcoin chart is extremely, extremely reactive to that 8 degrees of fire and air.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good confirmation then, for sure.
So that's how I've rectified it.
That's
Is
awesome.
I mean, you've gotten, when Mars in Gemini stationed at 8 degrees, you got a massive rally. When Jupiter stationed at 8 degrees of Aries, you got a massive rally. And I mean, that's just two of the ones I remember just right off the top of my head. But it tends to always rally when there's a favorable aspect to the ascendant, time and time again. So, it's been quite
How
reliable.
over the years, how has Mars transits affected this chart?
Well, Mars is like a double-edged sword, so to speak.
Hmm.
Mars can bring confidence to the market. So if it's a favorable trines or sextiles, you will usually get a rally. It can be quite destructive in the if it makes the transiting squares or oppositions. However, also the Mars like sign is really important. So interestingly, like I was actually having a conversation with Chris Brennan about this recently, a couple of months ago, because he was like, "Oh, Mars is going into Aries. That should be bad for Bitcoin." And I was like, "No, actually, the data shows that Bitcoin likes Mars in Aries, because the dignity of Mars in Aries, it's very good for markets. It's
Right.
actually historically, if you go back and look at it, we've done the data on it, the research." Is that both stocks and crypto respond very well to Mars and Aries. It brings that fiery confidence to the financial markets. So even though the aspects are not good, it makes a square to Bitcoin's Pluto, Mars, and Sun. Overall, actually, Bitcoin likes Mars and Aries. So the transits don't always tell you the whole picture. There's also certain planet sign affinities that just seem to do better than others. And that is, and there's another astrologer I work with, Marcilio's Musings. He's on our Twitter Spaces Financial Astrology Roundtable, and he does a lot of planet sign, research and kind of breaks it down like, I can show you some of his data, but yeah, I mean, it's like Mars, I think, basically Mars in Aries is like one of the best performers for stocks and cryptos. For example, also like something that's surprising is Venus in Virgo is actually quite good for Bitcoin. It's one of the best performers, Venus placements. So
Love that.
sometimes they're a little surprising, even though Venus is in fall.
It makes sense to me. You're
Well,
combining like a mercantile,
mm.
mathematics of Mercury, and then you're adding, the value of Venus there, and allowing it an immutable sign to sort of run free. To me, that makes sense. So that's
Well, the
interesting.
transits are good too. It makes all trines to that stellium. So
Yes.
so that kind of makes sense from the transitory picture.
Yes.
So
Wow.
sometimes the transits are important, and sometimes the sign placement is important, is more important. just recently, for example, I'll put the transit wheel up there, but we just had a long talking about planetary stations. Saturn stationed on Bitcoin's natal
I was going to
Uranus
bring that up. I
for
was going
like
to say
five
it just
weeks.
stationed there and it's been there for at least, I don't know how long, but a long time. It was at 19, it just hit 18.
Yeah, it just hit 18, so
So,
it's finally off.
right.
And I had warned my subscribers months in advance for this. And sure enough, we got a massive 4-week, 25% correction on Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not, historically, Saturn conjunctions in the Bitcoin chart. There's been 8. There's only been 8 transit Saturn conjunctions in the Bitcoin natal chart in the whole history of Bitcoin. And 6 out of 8 have been very bearish, bringing big market corrections, big market downtrends. In some cases, year-long bear markets, if Saturn made multiple conjunctions. But there was a couple of exceptions to that, and one of them was Saturn conjuncting Bitcoin's natal Venus. So that
Mm,
actually gave a bit of a surprising result. Initially, it did have a sharp pullback, but then it rallied very strongly. And one of the things that was confusing about that, I think, is that because Bitcoin's natal Venus is at 0 Pisces, it was also the Pisces ingress. So you had 2 factors at the same time. And actually, what ended up happening is that Saturn leaving Aquarius was actually a very positive thing for Bitcoin. So Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius was pretty good for Bitcoin. When Jupiter left Aquarius, for a couple of months in 2021, Bitcoin crashed. As soon as Jupiter came back into Aquarius, it went up to a new all-time high. And then as soon as it left, Bitcoin crashed again. So and leaving just Saturn behind in Aquarius was terrible. Because again, if you think of Aquarius as a sign of cryptocurrencies, having Saturn there was not good. So Saturn leaving
wow.
Aquarius was actually good in spite of the fact that it was transit conjuncting Bitcoin's natal Venus.
Wow.
So that Venus gives a surprising result. Like Jupiter conjunct there crashed it both times, which you would not have predicted, right? But it was more the Jupiter leaving Aquarius. So there's all these little idiosyncrasies of the chart that you have to be aware of. It doesn't just go by straight transits,
Yeah.
which I've learned the hard way, right? Because you would think, oh, Jupiter's going to conjunct its natal Venus, we're going to have a huge rally. No, actually, we got a massive crash.
There's always a web of other things to consider. Of course, you have aspects of all the other planets, but you have, mutual receptions and, all these other nuances of what's going on in the chart. So, it's an art that we like to try to master every single day. Maybe not in our lifetime, but if I ever
Listen,
have.
Art, it's like a crazy video game. And if you get it, it's a crazy astrology video game. And if you get it right, you make a ton of money. And if you get it
Absolutely.
wrong, you like lose a ton of money. Uh,
Right.
so it's like incentivized astrology, which I think is really fascinating.
Yes, I'm sure it does a lot to your motivations and your decision-making skills, and
But
it's a quick teacher, I imagine. So,
it is a
um,
great astrology teacher. See, you
right?
totally understand exactly why I'm so obsessed with it.
Yes,
Because
yes,
Bitcoin teaches us about astrology because it gives us this quantifiable data. And also astrology teaches us about Bitcoin. So it's like this never-ending loop.
and it shows you where your holes in understanding are. If it's, if you
Hmm.
expected one thing and then it didn't go that way, then you're like, well, what did I miss? And then you get to look in
Yes,
hindsight and
constantly,
love that. So.
constantly doing that.
Yeah. So okay, I know, in the solar activity lately, we've had some really volatile solar flares, and I was just curious if, as a Bitcoin person and all of this, if there was something like a Carrington event, what do you foresee happening in that circumstance to Bitcoin?
Oh, wow. Interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before.
Hmm.
I mean, that's like technologically out of my wheelhouse. That is
Hmm.
of my pay grade.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that. But that's a great question, Amanda. I would have to do some more research on that. I mean, I'm an astrologer. I'm a Bitcoin. I'm super knowledgeable about Bitcoin market, structure, price action, technical analysis, fundamental market factors. That is, something that would require research of someone who's an expert in the technological effects of a massive solar flare. So, yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's interesting that you asked that. I just recently, a few months ago, read a New Yorker article about that they're predicting that we're due for a Carrington event, and that they
Yes.
said in the article that it could actually damage. It could take years to recover from that event. We're not prepared. It could really knock out global technology systems. So yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, we're in the middle of solar cycle 25. We're at the height of activity. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's happening right now.
I mean, yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I think it's more dangerous for like satellites and telecom, as my limited understanding.
Right.
I mean, but Bitcoin exists on the internet. If the internet doesn't work, you can't send or receive Bitcoin transactions. And then yeah, I don't know.
I
That's
think the question would become, if, it went offline, would it be stored somewhere that we could eventually like a black box where we could like turn it back on eventually, or does it
You
just
can't
all
really
go
turn it
kaput?
off. I mean, you can't really. The only way that it could like get completely knocked out was, I mean, if the internet itself totally went down, then yeah, I mean, Bitcoin would sort of be knocked out of operation. But if the internet itself went down, you'd have a lot more problems than just trying to figure out what happened to
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
That's true. Yes, well, we'll ponder it and cross our fingers. Just kidding. But yeah, so some other questions. I guess since we're kind of looking at the possible downsides of digital currencies and things of that nature, do you have any other downsides that you might just say for people that are considering digital currency and maybe they should get a fair shake on, what are the possibilities and what are the downsides just for their knowledge?
Well, obviously, the most common criticism of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is the energy usage. They
Hmm.
are energy intensive. They do use an enormous amount of energy to keep the blockchains going. The mining, how Bitcoin is mined by these like solving incredibly computational math problems is what keeps the Bitcoin encryption system working properly so that transactions can be sent and received.
Right.
Now, I mean, I think that's just a feature of our whole society in general. I mean, Bitcoin could be run on all renewable resources, right? Um, so I think it's more about society as a whole transitioning to cleaner energy.
Hmm.
It is a problem, and just like anything, I mean, like flying, we like to fly. I like to travel. Flying, to Thailand or Europe is energy intensive too, but we like to do it. Is it worth it? Yeah. I think as the first world internet global currency, I think it is a valuable resource that is worth the energy usage. And I don't think like if you got rid of cryptocurrencies tomorrow, it would not affect global climate change one way or the other. It's just not a big enough factor. Um, so I think AI energy usage is actually going to become a much more bigger problem than crypto. So I think it's while there's some truth to it. I don't want to totally dismiss it. I think it's a bit of a red herring. But some people are, I mean, I've talked to Bitcoin skeptics and they're like, yeah, it's just uses too much energy. It's not something I want to be supportive of. And while I disagree with that position, I think it is, there's some validity to that point of view.
And over the
Um,
years, like it hasn't gotten any less energy. Um, it hasn't consumed any less energy over the years as we have sort of gone from 2020 from the video to now. It's still
Yeah.
it's still the same amount of energy
If not
usage.
more, because there's more traders and more users of
So
Bitcoin.
despite
But
technology and all of that, we still can't get that
no,
down.
because the Bitcoin protocol, software protocol would have to be changed. It's proof of work, which is these really, really intensive computational problem solving. That is just and the computers are all competing against one another to solve the computations for the encryption. Now, Ethereum did change its software protocol from proof of work to proof of stake, POS, which is way, way less energy intensive. And so a lot of sort of more people who are more concerned about the energy usage and the environmental concerns of Bitcoin have actually switched to supporting Ethereum blockchain, which is way, way less energy intensive now. So just in cryptocurrency as a whole, there have been some innovative solutions, but Bitcoin itself is still based on the proof of work, the energy intensive proof of work.
Got it.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it is energy intensive, but a lot of things are energy intensive. So it's sort of just, comparing, I think, the
You could argue for its validity and value in society, like you said, what's worth it?
yeah, exactly. I mean, it just comes down to whether you think having an independent, decentralized financial network that's outside the national and banking control system is worth it. I
Right.
personally think it is. Exchanges gets hacked and accounts can get hacked. So do have to have some basic sort of fundamental internet, knowledge, right? If you have a cryptocurrency account, you want to use like basically a 2FA, like Google Authenticator 2FA, right? If you have anything that you're using that has money on the internet, whether it's PayPal or Patreon or cryptocurrency exchanges, you want to be using a two-factor authentication system. So, I mean, the US cryptocurrency exchanges are very safe. And if you use a 2FA, and they have like whitelisting email, so nobody can just go in there and transfer it. There's like different lockdown settings you can put on your accounts. I mean, yeah, I mean, if there was a total like, Coinbase, the biggest exchange in the world, like in the United States went down or got hacked, that would be that would be a serious problem. So yeah, I
Right.
mean, but banks collapse too. I mean, you can lose
Yeah.
your money if a bank collapses as well. So
Yeah.
and as we found out, in 2008, the entire global financial system can also collapse. So nothing is collapse proof, but I think just most of the U.S. cryptocurrency exchanges. I mean, if you're internationally based, then Binance, these are all pretty legit, high security features, and I don't think the security concerns is really that big a deal. But you do have to take a few basic precautions.
Right. Do you think um, anything will overcome Bitcoin? This is a question that you had posed at the end of the video with Chris. Since Pluto has been in Aquarius for just a little bit, is that question different now? Do you have any other um,
Could anything like
contenders?
stop Bitcoin?
Like replace it, not replace it, but like kind of compete with it, or is it
Oh,
contender
oh, oh, I see.
for something like that?
Well, it's been 4 years and nothing has emerged.
Fair
Um,
enough.
I mean, there's always like the MySpace problem, right? We all remember MySpace being the first really big social media platform, but got totally eclipsed by Facebook. So could that happen to Bitcoin? I mean, yeah, it's definitely possible. Maybe something comes along that is as good as Bitcoin, but isn't as energy intensive. I mean, but nothing so far has emerged that's even comes close. And every, year that goes by, Bitcoin just has more and more of a lead on any other technologies. But as we know, things can change fast, and so yeah, we just never know. I mean, honestly, I don't personally know, but like I said, I mean, if you go back to that Bitcoin natal chart, uh, that Mars, Sun, exalted Mars in Capricorn, Sun, Pluto, stellium. Can anything take that on? I just
That's a
don't
good point.
know.
Yeah,
I just don't know. I
it's
mean,
very
for
strong.
now, it's not anything on the radar that's even going to come close. I mean, Ethereum is, the main competitor to Bitcoin, and its price action is very sluggish this cycle. It hasn't done as well as Bitcoin, and it's been kind of a disappointment. And so, I mean, that was really the only other crypto that could have sort of competed against Bitcoin.
Great. So, back in the day, people would try to mine for Bitcoin in their home. Is that happening still? Is it still practical to do that?
No, no, it's not possible. Not
It's
for,
sort of
it's
extinct
all
now,
done
right?
by huge rigs. Yeah, it's all industrialized, huge
Wow,
rigs. The computational power you need to mine Bitcoin is incredibly extensive. You have to have, yeah, it requires thousands of dollars in investments, and it needs to be more on an industrial level at this time.
that's
It's
good to know. Because
not a DIY. I mean,
yeah,
not a do your own thing at home kind of thing anymore.
yeah, DIY. So, you use tradingview.com for your like kind of everyday tool
Mhm.
to look at different numbers in the stocks and Bitcoin and all that stuff. Do you have any other tools that you would recommend that you use on a daily basis for this?
Like what kind of tools do you mean?
I don't know. Do you have like an app or I guess TradingView might be your main thing.
Well,
And
TradingView is a website that has all the financial markets assets that you can track. I mean, I have a Honeycomb Collective Almanac for Bitcoin
oh,
that has, so I have all the daily transits
for
to the
Bitcoin, that's so
Bitcoin,
cool.
chart calculated. I love the Honeycomb Collective
That's really smart. I
stuff.
have mine right here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that, that's what I use to keep track of the just the general astrology picture as well as the Bitcoin specific transits.
It's a really smart
Um,
idea.
so that would be, I mean, that would be the other tool. I mean, we use sort of standard financial market technical analysis, which is a whole other subject also that we combine together with astrology to sort of understand the price movements of Bitcoin. But that's like on TradingView. Those are features that are on the TradingView for any asset chart that you're looking at. That there would be, technical indicators that just traditional market analysts would use to sort of understand the market situation that you're in.
All right. That's actually a really good suggestion, that Honeycomb Almanac. I have mine. I have one every year since I think 2020.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, definitely get that if you haven't. Those are great. So,
Yeah,
I
it's good as a
guess
personal almanac too to keep track of your own personal transits and stuff like that. But
absolutely.
I use it more for the Bitcoin one so I can look at really break it down day by day.
Yeah, that's absolutely really smart. So, what are the upcoming transits to watch for
Hmm.
Bitcoin? What are you looking at? What do you expect any
Hmm.
activations coming up?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. So there's a couple of things. Actually, let's go to the Bitcoin progress chart. You want to look at some
Let's do
progression
it.
for a second?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Why do I have that there? Let's see. Okay, so let's go to the Bitcoin progress chart, and then so there's, progressions. There's two ways to use progressions, right? Progress to natal and transit to progressed.
Right.
So it's like playing three-dimensional astrology here. There's a lot to look at. So first of all, we're just going to throw up a natal buy wheel. By the way, I'm using lunaastrology.com here, which is
Cool.
my favorite cloud astrology. And if you like it, you can go to Luna Astrology and put in CryptoDamus code for a discount. So
Get it,
the
people.
Bitcoin progress sun is at 2922. So it's coming into a conjunction with Bitcoin's natal Jupiter in a couple months. And if I toggle that ahead to like the end of September, you can see it's almost exact there in the end of September. So that's, I think, going to be quite positive. That's a cool transit, which I think is just generally favorable for Bitcoin.
How long does it take to get into Aquarius from there?
Oh, to Aquarius,
It
that'll
still
be
takes
another
a
six
minute.
months.
Another 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So its progressed sun going into Aquarius also could be actually quite favorable because, as we've said, Aquarius is such a crypto-friendly sign. So its progressed sun moving into Aquarius actually is going to be like a whole new ball game, right?
Right.
But when your progressed sun changes signs, which only happens, every 30 years ostensibly, or in this case, it's been 17 years, or would be like around Bitcoin's 16th or 17th birthday or something like that, 15th or 16th birthday. So yeah, that'd be a big change.
It's
Uh,
exciting.
yeah. Okay, so there's that one. Now up here,
Oh,
you've
Venus
got
is headed for
Bitcoin.
Uranus.
Yes, yeah, progress Venus, but a lot sooner actually. So Saturn is not only transiting Bitcoin's natal, natal Uranus, which just happened. This is the progress chart. I wish I could throw them up both at the same time. You can't do
Oh
that
yeah,
on
you don't have
Pluto.
a
You can have the
tri-wheel.
three
That's okay.
tri-wheel. But Saturn is going to hit Bitcoin's progressed Venus there also at the end of August, actually. So that might be a problematic period.
Mm-hmm.
Saturn, tends to limit and restrict the market. It tends to cause corrections and pullbacks. So that might be a problem there. And it's, the effect is most pronounced when it's partile. So in the same degree is really where we look for the effect on markets. The orbs are very, very small in this kind of stuff. I mean, it can rally sometimes all the way up to a transit goes partile
Wow.
or whatever. Like, yeah, you don't really see a much of an effect, even with 1 or 2 degrees. We really look for that partile aspect to have an effect on the price movement. Sometimes it's not even on the price. It just has to do with news events having to do with Bitcoin or cryptocurrency markets. Like for example, when Saturn was on Bitcoin's natal Uranus for about 4 or 5 weeks there, what happened was the German government had confiscated 50,000 Bitcoin from some illicit guy, and they started selling massive amounts, right? Saturn is like government, some kind of government intervention, and oftentimes it's been government regulation, but in this case it was actually German government was selling huge amounts of Bitcoin, which of course depressed the market.
Oh my
So it
God.
was a government news event, and it did affect the price action of Bitcoin. So now here at the end of August, we're going to get Saturn on the progressed Venus. Of course, the transits to progressed, they're not as strong as transits to natal, but I would say this week-long period where Saturn is in very close proximity, that's going to be maybe a difficult period.
Mm-hmm.
Now, actually, for August, what we're looking at is it's interesting because there's nothing really terrible for Bitcoin specifically per se, but the astrology of August itself is so bad that I mean bad, right? I mean, there's no really good or bad astrology, of
I
course.
keep hearing it's terrible, so.
Uh, but I think it's very unfavorable for financial for the markets. However, right, everything's relative. Like unfavorable bad astrology can actually be great if you're looking to buy, which you
Exactly.
mentioned that you were. So this
Exactly.
might be really good for you. Uh, and I'm waiting to see a major stock market pullback. So I think this T square in August, which I can put up here for really quick.
Hmm.
There's a double T square alignment in August. So let's get rid of the Bitcoin chart. We'll just go to the regular astrology. And we'll go out. You've got the Democratic Convention, which I think is going to be fascinating to watch because this is a very unusual T squared. First of all, that forms on August, what is it, 19th. So I've been pointing this out to all my followers and subscribers, and maybe you have seen this as well, Amanda. But
Hmm.
uh, hang on a second here. I mean, I'm sure you've taken a look at this. Let me just get it all lined up here so it's nice and pretty. There you go. So, I mean, look at this alignment. I mean, first of all, you've got Mars is going to be squaring Saturn, which just sucks just in general.
Yes.
If nothing else was happening in August, you would just have a Mars Saturn square, and that alone would maybe be enough to depress the markets a bit. But in this case, you've got Jupiter
Jupiter.
and we'll say which is, by the way, debilitated in Gemini.
Right.
It's squaring Saturn, right? So you've got the Jupiter Saturn square, but it's not just any Jupiter Saturn square. You've also got Venus is
Opposite Venus.
debilitated in Virgo. It's opposing
Jeez.
Saturn. They're all lined up at 17 degrees. So you've got both benefics are debilitated by sign and afflicted by hard aspect to Saturn. Okay, this
Jeez.
is a nightmare aspect. It doesn't happen very often. It's an extremely rare that they would be debilitated by sign and afflicted to Saturn. And then also, of course, Mars is also, in the mix here too. So this looks, pretty rough.
Yeah, sorry to all the mutable placements.
Yeah, it's very
Warning.
close to my moon, actually. I mean, Jupiter will be on my moon, and Saturn will come in later and,
Ay.
and square it. Uh,
Well, yeah, that sucks. That's a rough one. And then the moon will probably trigger it. So whenever the moon hits probably Pisces
well, no,
that day,
actually,
or it opposes, I mean,
sure, yeah, the
it's
moon
active
will
year
come in and,
round.
and conjunct Saturn.
I mean, T-squares are active regardless because the moon's always aspecting it,
Well, no,
essentially.
but here's the thing. Here's the cherry on top, right? So you're gonna get a couple days later. Actually, no, it might even be, yeah, no, it's like a couple days later or whatever. You get this full moon at 27 Aquarius,
With
and
Mercury
it's in an
retrograde.
exact, oh, Mercury's retrograde all month too, just to,
Yeah, just to add that.
but look at this full moon at 27 Aquarius. It's actually squaring Uranus at 27 Taurus.
Oh,
So it's a
fun.
second T square. So this is making a second T square, okay, within
Wow.
a few days of the other T square that just formed. And so also, by the way, the USA sibling moon is at 27 Aquarius.
Oh, yeah. Whoa.
And okay, that's also opposing, Trump's ascendant natal Mars conjunction. It's
His
also
ascendant.
on, yeah, Leo. He's 28 Leo.
Yeah, Regulus, Leo.
He's 28 Leo with Mars at 26 Leo. And then Kamala Harris has Saturn at 28 Aquarius.
And she's a
And
Gemini
her
rising.
her sun is 27 Libra, so this full moon will be trine her sun. So maybe
Whoa.
good for her, but conjunct her Saturn. So anyway, August, now just forget about the politics for a minute, but this one, super unexpected, surprise, chaotic
Whew.
event.
Yep, August 19th, guys.
And we think this could, this is probably this double T square with, yeah, with the both of the benefics kind of really afflicted. It doesn't look good for financial markets. So I'm expecting a major pullback in the stock market now. And if there's a major pullback in stocks, usually it would drag crypto down too, even if there's nothing specifically happening for crypto. Uh, we've seen that happen. Now, sometimes the problem is there's two things here in financial astrology. First of all, bad astrology doesn't always crash the markets. And then number two, Bitcoin, sometimes you don't know how it's going to react.
Hmm.
Occasionally, like if there's a banking crisis, it will do well, even though everything else is doing terrible. So Bitcoin sometimes is a little hard to predict in terms of, one of the things in astrology is, I think, I'm doing this for over 20 years, is it's relatively easy to identify periods where there's going to be a crisis. 2020, I was talking about for years there was going to be a global crisis in 2020. Okay, that was a no-brainer. Pretty much
Super
every
easy to
astrologer
see. Yeah.
saw that coming. Now, April, I predicted a major global crisis event in April, and you saw a direct standoff between Israel and Iran. Everybody was saying, well, at least on Twitter, World War III is coming, and
Yep.
there's a
Eclipse
lot of
season.
people were very nervous. Eclipses,
Hmm.
that was a big event. But that was a short-term event. I had said it was going to be a crisis, but it would feel very intense in the moment, but it was actually just going to be a short-term thing. So August has another crisis lineup, as you can see. But how are markets going to do? Predicting a crisis is one thing. Predicting how markets respond to the crisis
Right.
is a whole other thing that's much more complex. And 2020, of course, while stocks initially crashed for about 4 or 5 weeks, it ended up being an incredible year for the stock markets. Like, who would have predicted that? That was very hard. That was very hard to predict, right? That
Yeah.
stock markets would do so well during the pandemic.
Right. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking it has that Capricorn stellium, the pandemic had all of that Capricorn energy, that kind of like in January, like January 20th, we had the, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, I mean, in Capricorn. So it was sort of like the basic nature of Bitcoin was imbued into the pandemic. So to see it kind of do well and thrive during that time makes sense to me.
Well, all the markets did. I mean, stocks had an incredible run in 2020 and 2021.
Right,
Of
right.
course, everything crashed out on the Uranus Saturn square of 2022 with the eclipses.
And
Um,
also this Saturn stationing on Uranus, it's also
on
opposing
Bitcoin's Uranus.
it's opposing the natal Saturn.
But not within 2 degrees until next year. See, that makes a
Okay.
big difference.
So
Uh,
Saturn opposition
so
is
next year, yeah, next
next year.
year, early next year, Saturn will come back. It will conjunct the natal Uranus and oppose the natal Saturn for a couple of weeks. And
Hmm.
that would also be something we'll be warning subscribers to months in advance to look out for that, because that doesn't look very good, you know.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anything else you wanted to add? I think those were all of my questions for you.
Oh, well, let's see. I mean, overall, I mean, I continue to be, bullish on crypto and stocks. I mean, I am looking for a major correction in October and excuse me, August and September. Yeah, one other thing that we could talk about is that September 17th eclipse.
Oh,
Have you looked at that?
no, September 17th
Let's
eclipse.
take a look at that.
Oh, yeah, no, I was about to ask you about the upcoming eclipses because they're going to activate what was going on in April.
Well, I really am worried about this September 17th eclipse. Um, I mean, the October 2nd one is a problem too. But first of all, this one it falls at 25 Pisces. It's going to be right on my natal Venus. So I don't know,
Okay.
you can give me a delineation for that, but
Ooh.
um it's going to be conjunct natal. It's going to, excuse me, not natal. It's going to be falling right sandwiched in between Saturn and Neptune. Okay.
Oof.
Uh and Pisces is a sign that can be given to sort of anxiety and panic, just generally speaking. Of course, it can be spiritual transcendence and sort of all of the great spiritual qualities of Pisces, of course, too, and divine sort of creativity. But in this case, I mean, this looks like a market panic sell-off to me, or at least a high probability, right? We're always talking in terms of probabilities. We can never, be sure that anything is going to happen 100% guaranteed. But uh, interestingly, this was the position of the moon, okay, during the Biden-Trump debate, uh, which obviously we know didn't go well for Biden and caused a panic, sort of a panic sell-off in the Democratic Party.
That's a good point.
Uh, Now that wasn't even an eclipse, right? And it wasn't even a lunation. It was just
Wow.
the moon was just passing through that area. So this eclipse, this is going to be a full lunar eclipse. And man, this is just a really worrisome one, not only for the financial markets, but I think that it just portends very confusing, events where it's going to be very hard to ascertain what the truth of the situation is. With Neptune, there could be a lot of confusion, delusion, and conspiracy theories.
Right.
Uh, and then it's also somewhat close to Saturn. I mean, 10-degree orb. Okay, it's not tight, but
Well, I
uh,
see
you
like
know,
the moon's going to pass over Saturn, and then as
yeah,
soon as it conjoins Saturn, I can see the anxiety and
yeah,
panic setting in. And then as it's approaching Neptune, more and more
yeah.
confusion coming, and then it hits the node at some point in the next
It's gonna
sign.
be, yeah, exactly. It
So
feels like
not
a
good
collective
progression.
anxiety moment. And I'm not sure exactly what the news events will be. Now, Trump's sentencing that he was supposed to have in July actually got moved to September 18th. So
Oh,
there's Trump's sentencing for his fraud. He was convicted on 34 felony counts, and he's still yet to be sentenced.
interesting.
So the sentencing falls within 24 hours of the eclipse. You
Mhm.
know, we have yet to see whether there's going to be a Kamala Harris Donald Trump debate, but if there is, it could be in September, and so that would be interesting.
Wow, that's
Um,
interesting that it's about fraud and Neptune is so prominent in the lunation there. Because I associate Neptune can
yeah,
be fraud,
totally.
like all of that. So interesting.
So
That's a lot
this,
going
yeah,
on.
this is, again, I mean, in terms of financial astrology, that's why I think that, and September, just generally speaking, is the worst month of the year for stocks and cryptocurrencies. So, I think we see, a sell-off that could begin in August that continues all the way into September here, and then, if we go 2 weeks out, we'll get that the solar eclipse. It's at 10 Libra, which is on my part of fortune.
Oop.
So I'm getting nailed by these eclipses quite strongly here. So
Hmm.
I'll have to like do some remediation and get some kind of talisman or something. But
Yeah, and then we'll get back to
uh,
you.
uh, so this one, is
Wow.
square Mars in Cancer, and it's ruled by Venus debilitated in Scorpio. So it's not great either. And this one is a south node solar eclipse.
Oh,
So the eclipse season, newsflash looks pretty pretty
you
problematic.
said historically South Node eclipses are more unfavorable than North Node eclipses, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, theoretically they are, right? Because the north node is like losses and
Hmm.
karmic debts, and
The
I think the
drain.
south node in general is more problematic. Generally speaking. I mean, the North
Yeah.
Node at least brings like gains and success and
Yeah.
wealth and things like that. So but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the eclipses come, in sets, and the at least for market timing, it's almost impossible because the effect of eclipses starts weeks before and continues for weeks after. So you never really know when the effect of the eclipse is actually starting or ending. You just have to know that whole period looks problematic. I mean, like
Yeah.
just as an example, Bitcoin was still almost making new all-time highs right around the April 8th eclipse. But then, it had a big 20% downturn that lasted all the way to May 1st. So it actually took weeks and weeks and weeks for the eclipses to play out.
So I just remembered Neptune in Aries is coming soon. And I heard from like a really old lecture that Neptune in fire signs can be associated with inflation. And I was just wondering what your thoughts on that are, and also what your expectations are for Neptune
Hmm.
through that sign.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's true. However, not with the Saturn conjunction. That's not going to be inflationary, I don't think.
Right.
Of course, the Saturn Neptune conjunction of 0 degrees Aries in February of 2026 is like the next really big thing.
It sets a
That's
scene
like,
for the whatever how many years it's going to be in Aries for Neptune. I don't even know. Is it like 20 or something like that that'll be in
I'm
Aries?
not sure off the top of my head,
It's a long period of
but
time.
a long period of time. I'm more worried about Saturn in Aries, actually, because first of all, Saturn is debilitated in Aries, of course, and
Hmm.
I mean, I have Saturn in Aries. It's also my Saturn return, but that's another story. The big problem is that Saturn in Aries is going to make squares, like a series of about 5 squares,
To
right?
all the Capricorn
It's
stuff.
going to square Bitcoin, Pluto, Mars, and Sun.
Oof.
And it's going to square Bitcoin's Sun 3 times. So it's only going to square the Pluto and Mars once each, but it is going to make the series of 3 squares to Bitcoin's Sun. So one of the things that we're predicting, and this might be a good conclusion to the episode, is that 2026 looks like a big wipeout year for cryptocurrencies, and especially with the Saturn Neptune conjunction in February, possibly bringing a major global crisis.
Wow.
Uh, that would make sense. Now, the big bear market years for crypto were 2014 and extended into 15, 2018, and then 2022, right? So every 4 years, we've had a massive bear market wipeout year. And then just going by that alone without astrology, 2026 is next in the 4 year bear market cycle for crypto. And
Wow.
then Saturn basically confirms that that will happen. So we plan to be completely out of all crypto by the end of 2025 or January. There's one possible thing in January of 2025. I'll just share with you real quick here.
Hmm.
So the 2013 Bitcoin cycle top where it hit like $1,000. And it's sort of that's when Bitcoin started to become a little bit more famous and more known was actually in 2013 when it hit $1,000 for the first time. Well, uh, let me see here. So it turns out that Jupiter was exalted in Cancer, and it was at 19 degrees Cancer, which was exactly partile trine to Bitcoin's natal Uranus, right? And that would make sense, right? That would line up like, oh, Jupiter Uranus combinations would be a sort of very overly exuberant but short-term sort of market rally, like what we would call a blow off top. And sure enough, in January of 2025, right before Saturn goes into Aries, you get that same exact trine. And what we've seen time and time again is the astrological signature for a Bitcoin cycle top is a Jupiter soft aspect transiting the natal chart, followed by a long series of Saturn aspects, then bringing a bear market. So this has the same signature of every other market cycle top we've ever seen for Bitcoin. So my best guess, and I do want to say that it's just a guess because this is 18 months away in the future, is that a Bitcoin market cycle top will come somewhere between November of 2025 and January of 2026. And then that would be followed by a major crash out of the cryptocurrency markets based on Saturn then moving into Aries.
Wow. That's a
Does
really
that make
good,
sense?
yes, a really good future roadmap for everybody listening if you're looking to invest or looking to study it. Thank you for all of this. This has been fantastic. I really liked looking at all the transits, and um, I like that it could be our future. I like that, our money is transforming before our eyes. Even in life, like when I'm at the cashier, like they don't have cash. They're out of cash. And I'm like, is this our new normal? And all of the cash registers at like Whole Foods and stuff, they're now taking your palm,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
scanning your palm and things like that. So, I can see it in real life scenarios, and I'm sure it's only going to get more prolific as we go through this, especially Pluto and Aquarius transit. So, thank you
And,
for,
and, and Uranus and Gemini.
yeah, thank you for bringing the data to the to astrology, and I really enjoy following your tweets. If you guys have never heard about CryptoDamus on Twitter, then definitely go follow. Again, it's at Astro Crypto Guru on Twitter, Robert Weinstein, aka CryptoDamus, and you can go to astrocryptoreport.com. And if you're really, interested in learning and studying alongside Robert, you can join the Patreon, CryptoDamus1 on Patreon. Help support, we always appreciate that. And yeah, thank you for being here. And
So I
maybe,
also just wanted to mention that we have a course. We have an introduction to financial
oh,
astrology,
lovely.
15 hours of tutorial videos and 6 PDF study guide materials. And it's for total beginners. It's an intro to astrology and with a financial focus. So it's like for total beginners all the way to intermediate. And we go into some pretty advanced techniques towards the end. All the techniques I just showed you using transits and progressions for cryptocurrency charts, stock IPO charts, and the bigger mundane astrology market cycles over the last century as well. So if you're interested in learning more about financial astrology, I recommend checking out my course. It's on my website.
That's awesome. I knew you had a course. I'm really glad you brought that up because I'm I might look at that. So, yeah, thank you for everything today. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time. Bye.